It all begins in the city of demons. On the ground lies a pile of bodies of the last heroes who tried to confront the king. On the throne, he says he's eager to face a real hero. It's been 100 years since anyone decent appeared. He is the demon lord Belmont, and 100 years ago, the hero who mastered the power of fire came to face him. And with icy flames, he killed him. 90 years ago, the hero who had mastered the element of water came here, and he caused him to drown in boiling waters. 70 years ago, it was the turn of the hero who mastered the power of the wind, who was defeated within a tornado. 50 years ago, the earth hero, whom he buried in crystal sand. After that, no other hero appeared. But at this moment, a spherical heroine arrived for the duel. She says she finally found herself eager. She's stepping on the head of one of the Demon King's subordinates. And from the throne, Belmont asks if she hasn't learned her lesson. He mastered all the elements, so no one stands a chance against him. However, the spherical heroine says that men love to exaggerate their abilities, but the only way to know how much he can take is by going at him. And she jumped towards him. The battle between the two lasted 7 days and 7 nights, until finally she exchanged saliva with Belmont, who felt that his body was being controlled by an unknown magic. He tried to react, but his strength was fading. When she took her mouth off, sparks flew. How delightful, how dangerous. Belmont asked what that power was, and she said it was the method of duel cultivation. And with that, the invincible Demon King was finally defeated by a hero. The girl's name was Yahello, and now 50 years later, only the ruins of the Demon King's castle remain. An instructor is taking her class to visit the Demon King's museum, and everyone is excited to see the place, but she warns them not to touch anything. She is a royal knight. Inside, everyone is impressed, and on the throne, the Demon King is preserved until now. She tells the children that after he was defeated, he was turned into a statue. Since then, the human world has lived in peace, all thanks to Ms. Yahello, the heroine who defeated him. The instructor was going to take them to see more of the castle. When she saw the maid beside her, she pulled her arm and showed her to everyone. Because of the hero's compassion, they allowed the demons to still live among them. However, they can be identified by the horns on their heads. She then throws the girl to the ground and warns that although they have survived and no longer possess magic, all their powers were sealed along with the Demon King, so they no longer pose any danger. And with that, they move on to the next exhibition room. However, the demon girl stands up and says they just need to wait until tonight and everything will change. Night falls and the demon girl finds herself face to face with the statue of the king. She prepared a magic amplifier made with dragon saliva. It's been 50 years, but she finally collected enough. And today is the day she will use it on the Demon King. She says she only has one chance. So she opens the bottle and drinks and instantly feels that she has regained some of the power she had long ago. She then, drooling, chants the spell. A pentagram appears above her and a lightning strikes her palms and the ground. She concentrates the power and goes towards the Demon King. After the flash of light, she falls to her knees, begging for it to have worked. But all she did was create a small crack, which suddenly starts to break. The girl cries, saying that finally the Demon King Belmont is back. And where the stone was, a little boy appears. He says he feels like he's been sleeping for a long time. The girl asks if he really is King Belmont. He says he is, and who is she? By his gaze, she recognizes that it really can only be him. You can feel it from the aura he exudes, and she sends him off on a mountain adventure. She says it's her, Lacey, and the Demon King is confused. He remembers her on the ground and looks at the gigantic spheres and asks why she's pretending to be Lacey. She didn't have that much maternal power. However, Lacey warns that actually she's like this. It's just that after the war, she lost her abilities, and that made the demons even change their appearance. All this time, she's been pretending to be someone else, working and buying dragon saliva in the black market. After 50 years of hard work, she finally resurrected him. Clutching the mountains, she says she also misses the skinny form. While Belmont can't believe that the skinny version was really an illusion. He then remembers what happened before he was defeated. That woman used some kind of element he had never encountered before. Lacey says it doesn't matter, that finally he's back and now the demons will regain all their power. But Belmont says he's not interested and she asks why. He explains that there are better things to do. She shouts at him asking what could be more important than restoring the glory of the demon race. Putting on his shirt, he says he's been a re-demon for 1,000 years, he's tired of it. Not to mention that apparently everyone is living peacefully, right? Lacey tries to calm down, remembering that in demon years he's still just a teenager. She then asks what power that girl used against him. They need to find out so he can be prepared. Belmont thinks and says he remembers that the name Lacey is curious to know, just say it. He then says it's a method of bodily fluid exchange via mouth, and she called it dual cultivation, something he had never heard of. Lacey is a bit shy there and asks what the sensation was like with dual cultivation. Belmont says it was strange. All this blood started rushing to the lower part of his body and it was an indescribable pain. Lacey thinks he's a new boy. It really is unknown magic to him. Suddenly, the instructor appears behind them, saying she thought something was wrong, and recognizes the boy as the demon king who mastered the 4 elements. She never expected such a weak woman like Lacey would be able to resurrect him. Lacey tells him to protect himself and run, but suddenly she's thrown against the wall and slammed to the ground. Belmont asks if she's okay, but she tells him to run. The instructor says it's not time to worry about others, and says not to underestimate her magic, but Belmont says her magic is ridiculous. He looks at his. He reaches out his hand, but nothing happens. Everything is still sealed indeed. A sword slash sends a barrage of wind that throws him. Lacey runs to help him, and Belmont realizes he has a human and weak body. Seeing the situation, the instructor thinks it's the perfect chance for a promotion. Lacey apologizes, saying it's all her fault. But Belmont wants to know why the instructor is saying they're weak. Is the demon race being treated like this? Lacey explains that yes. After he was defeated, the Emperor signed a treaty saying that humans and demons would be treated the same. But the truth is that demons are treated like trash by humans. Belmont smiles and, looking at Alia's statue, says she also didn't succeed apparently. Lacey activates a pentagram beneath her, saying she learned some magic from humans and she'll buy him some time to escape. The instructor says she doesn't stand a chance, and Belmont recognizes that with that power, Lacey won't be able to win. He just woke up, he can't be imprisoned again. But when he tries to activate the magic, everything is still sealed. The 4 elements he mastered can't be used, but he feels some unknown magic in his heart. He calls Lacey, who asks what's up, grabs her little arm, and comes for the salve exchange. Lacey seems to like it a little. She's shy, sparking as always. But some black lightning bolts start coming out of his back. Damn, that's too much spark, Evan's boy. Belmont says he's feeling it's working. The only power that remained with him in the last 50 years, the dual cultivation method. The instructor sends a barrage of wind his way, but he stretches his arm against her power and says, burn and die. An explosion happens in her face, leaving her wrecked, wondering what the hell magic out of nowhere was that. Belmont says it's the power behind the heroine that sealed him. She's lucky he hasn't mastered that magic yet, or she would have turned to ashes. The instructor says it's impossible. How could a demon trash like him learn the heroine's magic? Belmont tells her to show a little more respect for the demon race, and with that, she's finished on the ground. He then calls Lacey, who's a bit embarrassed now, and says he wants to remove that demonic seal from the entire human race. She says that's a great idea. She's excited, and the boy then looks back and tells her, take me to the place with the most women in this country. Let's cultivate until we're tired. Lacey is obviously confused, but Belmont explains that he's going to use the dual cultivation method to revive the entire demon race. The city of Hosey was named after Alia Hosey, the heroine who defeated Belmont. It used to be known as the Demon City, but now it's the most prosperous human city. As long as you have money, you can get whatever you want. Anything you want, there are foxes, succubi, and the place is buzzing. Inside, there's Lacey and Belmont, surrounded by a bunch of girls who are saying that he's extremely welcome. The fox offers a tea of essences, saying he'll be very relaxed. And the snake girl warns him to be careful with her, or he'll end up very entangled with her. The slime asks if he wants to have some sticky fun. Even Belmont is a little embarrassed by all of this, but he knows it's to restore the demon's power. The fox then asks which one he will choose. Belmont says he's not here to make choices. Lacey is moved. The king really isn't that kind of person, but he says he wants all of them. They are overjoyed, saying it's a great choice, and start leading him away, saying he has great taste. Lacey is thinking that in the end, all men are the same. But Belmont is curious to know if his power activates differently with other races. But one of them suddenly takes off his hood, saying he doesn't need to be shy in here. But everyone is startled when they see that he has 2 little horns. He goes to pick up the tea, and she takes it from his hand, goes to pick up the grape, and she takes that too. Belmont asks what's wrong, and now they all turn into monsters, and they are both thrown out. The girls warn that they thought they were some rich adventurers and not just some demon trash. They better never show up there again. With that, they go in, and Lacey says she warned him not to take off the hood. But on a wall there, a succubus laughs in their faces, saying it's ironic to see 2 lost demons like that nowadays. In the city of Hosey, a demon can barely survive. If they want to blame someone, blame the Demon King for losing the war. Lacey says that's not true. It has nothing to do with the Demon King. And the succubus is impressed that after 50 years, someone still defends him. Belmont gets up and goes to her asking if she wants to fight, but he stares at her and she starts trembling. Our hero asks how a demon can live a good life in this city. The succubus realizes she can't deny answering him and says the only way is if he becomes a student at the Elmont Hero Academy. But the entrance exam is in 2 days. Belmont tells Lacey to get up, they're going, but the succubus says it's impossible for them to pass. Demons without magical powers stand no chance. But Belmont warns her not to worry, because the Demon King always corrects his mistakes with his own hands. 2 days later, a guy tells them they're not qualified for the exam and can go home. They're startled and lying there on the ground. Now they find out that for a demon to take this test, they need a recommendation letter from a noble. Lacey says they should try something else while Belmont is depressed, saying he's a trash demon king, just a loser with a horn. She remembers that he only gets so sad when it takes more than 10 seconds to defeat a hero. She has to do something to wake him up, but suddenly a lightning bolt strikes next to the two of them and he goes flying. Lacey goes to see if he's okay, and a monocle guy tells a miss called Alice to give up. Alice says she won't forgive him next time and now she's going to pass. The girl's name is Alice Rosie, the same last name as the heroine. Lloyd tells her that she can't take the same test as ordinary people. They prepared the best path for her. Meanwhile, Belmont is getting up, beaten down. But Alice says she doesn't want to hear about that person anymore. And she conjures a phoenix magic towards him. But he creates some barriers and blocks it all, warning her that it's useless for now. As promising as she may be, it's still too early. She continues to attack with magic, but he keeps defending calmly. But once again, one of the spells rebounds and hits Belmont in the face. Lacey notices something, and in front of Lloyd, Belmont appears. An explosion rocks the city, and a second later, the guy is finished on the ground. Alice wants to know who this boy is, and Belmont tells the old man to be more careful when fighting. But the guy isn't getting up, so he goes to him to make him apologize. He's about to punch Lloyd when Alice tells him to stop. But as soon as Belmont looks back, he can see the resemblance between her and the heroine. But Alice didn't like that he kept staring at her, so she goes up to him and touches his shoulder. Instantly, she feels the dual cultivation method running through her body. She says it's amazing, and Belmont recognizes the power activation. Even though he doesn't want it, his magic is activated, and the two of them are transcending. Staying of power is almost coming out, but Alice pushes them each to one side, narrowly saving his underwear, and asks Belmont if he's okay. He's a bit tired, saying there's something strange, his power was activated without him wanting it. Lacey explains that the girl is the descendant of the heroine and Alice wants to know who they are. Belmont goes up to her and stares, saying she looks similar, but the size estimate doesn't match. Apparently, it's not the same person. Maybe he's overthinking it. But then he gets slapped in the face, obviously. Alice apologizes, saying he's a blind demon, so he uses other parts of his body to recognize people. It's a good excuse. After chatting for a while, Alice understands the situation that they need a letter, but Lacey pulls Belmont away, saying they're leaving. But Alice doesn't want to leave because she wants to know what magic he activated. As far as she remembers, demonic magic has been sealed for a long time. Besides, she's thinking about how easily he found Lloyd's weak spot. Belmont decides to explain, saying it's something only he possesses, because he's the legendary. Lacey stops him, saying he can't say. He continues and says he's the legendary descendant of the incubus. Poor maid, she thought he was going to say he's the king. Meanwhile, Alice says she's never heard of a male version of a succubus. Belmont decides to explain. If she touches certain places, she'll feel something, and gets stronger when she does certain things. He's interrupted, saying she understands, and says the two did a favor by removing Lloyd from her path. In her family, they always learn to repay favors. The scene changes to the Hero Academy, where all the other candidates have already entered. Alice and Belmont arrive running. The chubby guy tells them to give up if they don't have the letter. But Belmont obviously now has a letter from the Rose family, and Alice also appears, saying she's here to register. The guy's attitude changes instantly and tells everyone to go. When they open the door, they see a crowd. Everyone recognizes Alice and also notices the two demons behind her. Alice thinks that even if they manage to get into this place, it seems like it won't be easy to survive here. At that moment, a beastly girl is waiting for them, saying she didn't expect Miss Alice to register here too. She's Newt, and Alice says she's the person she likes the least. Newt comes and pulls her by the chin, telling her not to say those things, they're childhood friends. She sees the two demons and asks Alice if they're her servants. Alice warns her to be careful with the boy, that he's a descendant of the incubus. But Newt completely ignores her and sends our boy off on a spherical adventure, saying he's cute. Belmont finds it strange that his power didn't activate. Newt asks if he wants to be her pet, and Belmont doesn't respond. Alice pulls Belmont, telling Newt not to act like that. If she's feeling so hot, she should go home and not dirty the training field. They argue there when Belmont is pulled again. A white-haired girl appears behind him, sniffing him, and both recognize her instantly. It's Rostana, the elf, who puts Belmont to nap, saying he really smells good. Is it the power of an incubus? He awkwardly glances around. Rostana says she can't hide such good training material. What training material? Besides, she asks Alice why she's here too. Her brother got into school and snagged a seat at the academy. Isn't that enough for her family? Newt says she'll have to remind her of the old hero's contract. Alice tells them to shut up, saying it has nothing to do with them. Belmont is still confused about who they are. And Alice explains that they're all descendants of the heroes who defeated the Demon King. Belmont is confused. Heroes, as far as he remembers, there was only Alice. Alice explains that during the castle invasion, there were other heroes with her. It's just that the girl defeated him alone. Suddenly they hear a noise, lightning strikes in the middle of the hall, and a blonde boy appears. He introduces himself as Edward, this year's examiner. Everyone there seems to recognize him as a future director. And Lacey is scared, saying it's dangerous here now. But Belmont tells her not to worry. He doesn't have a clear idea of what activates the dual cultivation method. But after the activations he's had, he feels like he can manipulate any magic at the moment. So he's going to show what he can do. Lacey is impressed and recognizes that it's the same power he used to have. He really came back, but the thing dissolves in his hand. He realizes he's able to control a minimal amount of power. Not to mention the most incredible thing is that it disappears as soon as it leaves his body. Lacey doesn't understand why he seems to be proud of that. But the worst part is that they need to pass the exam, and with that, it won't be enough. She calls for Belmont, who's confused. She grabs his wrist and pulls him into a round adventure. He asks what's going on, and she pulls out another dragon's saliva from among the mountains. This will help him pass the exam. But it lasts a short time, so he has to take it right when he's going to take the test. But Belmont stands up and says he can't use that. She asks why, and Radiant, he says it's wrong to cheat on the exam. She startled, what kind of demon king is this that cares about that? And tells him that the rebirth of the demon race depends on him. But Belmont tells her that he believes that demons are still much stronger even with the magic sealed. She doesn't need to worry, he's going to pass this exam. She relaxes a bit and becomes confident. But suddenly, a hand appears on top of the balls that Goku is looking for. It grabs the bottle and disappears. The hand enters the wall, and when they see it, Edward the examiner got it. He recognizes it as a magic amplifier and says it's an exam cheat. So she's disqualified, the magic circle grows, and she disappears. Belmont is startled, but Edward tells him not to worry. He just removed her from the exam area. But he's disappointed. He decided to pay attention to the demons who registered this time. Too bad she wanted to cheat, and says that demons never fail to disappoint others. Obviously, the school kids all hate demons, and Edward, seeing that Belmont is quiet, asks if he wants to say something. Belmont says it's nothing, but he guarantees that later Edward will apologize to Lacey. But Edward replies that he's not wrong to remove from the test field someone who is thinking of cheating. Our demon says the problem was that he called her weak. Edward ignores, thinking he won't do anything because this demon was brought here by Lady Alice. He then activates his power, saying he wasted too much time with these weaklings, and it's better to start the selection exam right away. A massive circle appears beneath everyone, and they are teleported up onto a tree. Up there, he warns that the test will be simple. He creates a bridge to the castle and announces that the first 100 to cross it in under 30 minutes will qualify. People think it's simple, and he starts without delay. Everyone starts running, but Belmont realizes something's wrong. His foot feels like it's sinking. The bridge Edward created is made of slime, and unless you have enough magical power and know how to concentrate it under your foot, you sink. Alice isn't doing well, while Newt, her bestial friend, passes easily. Edward smiles, seeing the demon boy drowning. Belmont is almost submerged and says there's no way out. They'll have to use the power left from the cultivations. He turns the slime around him into water, surprising Edward, who thinks he'd need excellent magical control to keep making that change. But when he looks, Belmont is swimming in the slime. Edward is incredulous. Even the Academy's professor doesn't have that much control. But Belmont smiles, saying there's more to come. People are gradually moving when suddenly tentacles emerge. Belmont startles, and Edward says there's no way he can be a slime that size. No matter how weak small ones are, large ones are unstoppable. Newt says they can't squeeze hard enough as she likes, and then she starts cutting everything. Rostana easily makes a barrier and blocks. A girl is about to go for another genre of work when Alice sets fire to the slime and saves her just in time. The girl thanks her, but Alice says she didn't do it to save her. It's just because the creature was in the way, while thinking if she did it, he's a pervert. In this case, it's Edward who's making more creatures. He's impressed with the descendants of the hero's performance, but he's sure the little horn one is eliminated now. And then he sees a bunch of tentacles facing something. When the power lowers, he sees it's Belmont chatting and petting the slimes. Edward is startled. The slime's language was lost decades ago. Remembering how little power Belmont has, he says it's impossible until he sees a magic circle in his mouth. He concentrated his little power to create a spiritual communication magic. But Edward smiles with a vial in his hand. He says he's the examiner who decides how it goes. The slime suddenly turns purple and attacks Belmont, who dodges. Now it's oil slime, just don't let the Americans know or they'll come for it. The oil attacks him and Belmont realizes his foot is stuck and won't escape. Edward yells that finally this garbage will be eliminated. An explosion occurs and Alice protects him. She asks if he's okay. He's confused because she saved him but tells him not to misunderstand. She only came here because she was also trying to get to the other side. While Edward is losing his mind with Alice caring about this pathetic demon, but he can't hurt her or he'll have trouble. It's better to get that potion back. But the oil starts absorbing all the other slimes, and Edward's spatial magic breaks. He won't be able to retrieve the potion he handed over. Alice conjures a fire magic and throws it at the oil, but it does nothing. And Belmont warns that it will be useless because that creature is under the effect of python blood. It's a simple potion that makes a person regain 1% of their power. Alice is startled, saying 1%, how did he become so strong? Belmont explains it's different for slimes as they are multiple entities within one. When they take such a potion, the power increases by 1% for each fused slime. Alice throws another explosion that does nothing new. And Belmont tells her to stop because it's useless, and she tells him to do something instead of criticizing. Belmont says that since she's here, there's a way he can win with that magic. She says if there's a way, he better do it soon. Hand on her waist, he pulls her close. She startles, confused and shy. What are you doing? I'm the professional Saliva Swapper, he says, feeling the power of duel cultivation magic while she's there, not understanding anything. But she doesn't let go either, her hand is still there. Man, there's a lot of magic. He extends his hand and even the slime is becoming shy. But now Belmont realizes that his power is also activated. Alice gets angry and gives him an atomic punch, blowing up the boy. She makes a crater on the bridge and says he's beyond saving if he's thinking about that kind of thing in the middle of a battle. The poor guy's buried there, thinking she's scarier than the creature. She says she'll hold off the slime alone and he should call someone for help. But Belmont says she's not strong enough and will die before he gets back. She kicks him again, telling him to stop bothering her. And Belmont asks why she's still there even at the cost of her own life. She says as a heroine it's her duty to protect people. Belmont remembers the knight said the same thing. Suddenly, the oil is about to attack her from behind. She creates a protective barrier that manages to withstand the first blows. But Belmont realizes it's going to break and there's an attack almost in her face. He jumps and pulls her. An explosion occurs and they are both thrown. Underneath him, she asks why he's still there. It's not time for him to play the hero. He tells her that if the hero's mission is to protect people, that also includes the demon race. And if that's the case, he'll pass this and become a hero. She says she understands, but why is he still crushing her? A slime is coming for another attack and she says she can't block that. Belmont says he doesn't need to block it and grabs her hand. She wants to know why he keeps thinking about these things. He tells her to shut up and focus the energy in her hand and she can feel her power concentrating in her palm. Our hero says he realized she does have a good amount of magic, but terrible control, and she asks what he's trying to do. Belmont explains that he'll just use her magic more efficiently, thinking that it doesn't matter if the dual cultivation method doesn't activate since he's the prodigy who mastered the 4 elements. As long as he has magic to use, he can do something. Transformed, the oil attacks again, but Belmont shoots flames and tears the creature in half, which evaporates. And he realizes that with that, part of his power seems to have returned, and on the other side of the bridge, everyone who made it is there. Edward is terrified that Alice might have died, but he startles when he sees our boy Belmont bringing her back and even telling him to his face that it seems he passed. Everyone is incredulous that Alice needed a demon's help to pass, and Belmont is getting angry at all this prejudice. Alice is thinking of killing him, she needs to kill him. But Belmont tells her she needs to focus first on staying alive. Edward then comes to talk to them and informs that the miss passed. However, the demon cheated, so he's disqualified. Belmont is startled, but the other students say they knew only a cheating demon could pass anyway. But Alice says he was with her the whole time. As difficult as it is for her to admit, she confesses that she only passed because of him. So she's a witness that he didn't cheat. Edward says she's very naive to think that, but he's a demon, and every demon had their powers sealed long ago. This means that if he used magic, he cheated, and then he prepares the teleportation circle, saying he'll do the judgment. But he gets punched in the face and falls to the ground. Bellman asks if he's tired of talking nonsense, and the teacher is baffled. Our boy warns that he won't execute him now because he wants to pass the test. Alice realizes he not only has incredible magic control, but can also absorb magic from others. Edward starts cursing, saying he's a demon, but someone is coming from behind, saying that they have an extraordinary student. Damn, is it just the student who's extraordinary? Everyone recognizes her as the headmistress. She greets Alice, who says she's under her care, and Edward tells her to let him handle things. However, the headmistress just tells him to hush and goes towards Bellman, asking if he cheated. He calmly says no. She then tells him to take a stroll with her, and the two are teleported to another room, a place that seems like a courtroom with several nobles seated around. The headmistress introduces herself as Karen Lin, and says she has prepared a test especially for the two. However, Bellman says he's not very interested. He already passed Edward's test. Karen says it's necessary because both broke the Academy's rule. The first rule is that they don't accept demons, as the hero school was created to defeat them. And the second rule is that the Academy only accepts one noble from each family. Bellman says if these rules are secret and not everyone knows, they don't count as rules. Alice tells him to be careful and stop disrespecting the headmistress, but he says he's just telling the truth. The plump headmistress agrees, saying he's not wrong, but the test won't be difficult. And then she asks why they want to enter the Academy. Alice says she wants to enter the Academy to protect people of the ancient heroine. And Bellman says he wants the demon race to have the same rights as the others in this world. Obviously, none of the nobles around like hearing that. The plump headmistress laughs in their faces, saying that one wants to become the person who faces demons and the other wants to restore the demon race. She says she's excited about what they'll do and summons 2 rings. These rings serve as a test to see if they are qualified to be heroes. Bellman asks what happens if they're not, and the headmistress warns that the ring will drain their energy until they have nothing left and die. Alice says it's very risky, and Bellman asks her how she didn't know about this. She says she doesn't know anything about her family. Not to mention, the butler also hid everything. The headmistress says it's simple. Whoever survives passes, but Alice is unsure. However, Bellman says the person she wants to become shouldn't be afraid of a situation like this. She tells him to shut up, he's just an incubus. How would he know what she wants? The headmistress says enough chit-chat, and they put on the rings. Nothing comes out of Alice's ring, but Bellman emits a purple energy. Suddenly, energy starts coming out of hers too. The power passes through both their chests, and when they look, there's a knight with a sword in front of them, who claims to be the judgment ring and is now present in their hearts. So they are to grant the soul, greed, and lust for judgment. However, Bellman smiles and says it's just a demonic ring. The soul gets angry, calling him an arrogant brat. But then he sees Bellman's gigantic soul on his back, who asks if he recognizes the power. The soul immediately dissipates into the air, and the headmistress congratulates him, while Alice is suffering from various illusions judging her, saying she doesn't compare to the ancient heroine and weaken her mother by being born. The headmistress says she's almost powerless and will soon be executed. Bellman conjures an explosion and throws it at the creature. But the headmistress says his half-baked magic does nothing, and he has to respect the hero's rules. Alice says he doesn't need to worry about her. However, Bellman says it doesn't make sense. If you don't accept the hero's rules, you're discarded. He then hugs Alice and his hand is pierced. Both are frightened by this. But Bellman says it doesn't make sense for the hero's rule to impose their will on others. And even if it goes against their will, he will protect her. She sheds a tear, calling him an idiot, and at that moment, the circle on his chest activates. He can feel it's the famous duel cultivation, and an energy emanates from the circle, evaporating the creature. The headmistress applauds, saying, "Congratulations, you passed." They feel embarrassed but relieved. However, when she notices his hand on her shoulder, she tells him to let go, saying he's a pervert. After that, Bellman went to meet Lacey outside, who says it's difficult to stay there with everyone staring at her. Bellman says that place is perfect for him, and Lacey wants to know why it's perfect. He points to 1, he points to 2, he points to 3, saying there's plenty of races here, he won't need to go far to do the dual cultivation. Alice feels a bit embarrassed, but thinks it's all for reviving the demon race, so it's okay, and hands him a book. How to interact with the opposite sex of any race. What dwarf women like. How to make a beast woman fall in love with you. Alice says she's sure it will be of great use to him. Bellman says she doesn't understand his plans, but it's okay, she does seem focused on helping. He says he'll take care of things at the academy while she takes care of the rest outside. Walking through the corridors, he thinks he can't disappoint her. If it's to revive the demon race, even if he has to cultivate with all the women in this place, he won't give up. When he opens the door, he sees a bunch of sweaty muscle heads staring at him, saying, "Ah, this is the little demon boy who passed, he's mine." Our guy closes the door. Unfortunately, in this academy, the rooms are segregated by gender. In class, he's already finished, since gender segregation is the worst thing for this guy. The professor announces the student representative, who will be a guy named Ricket. It seems like people recognize him as the son of the richest man in the world. Not to mention, he's from one of the most powerful families too. He goes up there thinking this bunch of plebeians is lucky to hear his voice. The only person who can stand beside him is Alice Rosie. But looking at Belmont, he says that trash is tarnishing her reputation, so he won't go easy on him. Belmont takes a look at him, wondering why this guy is staring at me, and remembers Lacey told him to have a good relationship with friends. If that's the case, he needs to give a little smile. But the darn guy only knows how to make a villainous face. That's his best smile. Poor Ricket gets a scare at this darn demon. Sometime later, everyone wants to recruit him for some student groups. But he's tired of it. He bangs on the table and says he'll face the enemy head-on. He goes up to Belmont, calling for him. Belmont turns around and Ricket asks what his intentions are with Miss Alice. Our guy flashes his super smile again, saying she's just a friend he knows. But Ricket says enough of that, it's time to take him down. He conjures a magic circle and summons a chimera. Everyone in the room is startled and Belmont seems to remember something. Ricket asks if he's scared, but Belmont is patting the creature's head and the fool gets scared. He summoned it just to scare the guy, but he can't control it. And now the creature will get angry, since these chimeras were once the strongest monsters controlled by the demon race. And having one in the middle of class is something scary, but Belmont is telling her to calm down, saying he knows it must be bad to be trapped by magic. But Ricket loses his temper and throws a chain to control her, which turns and attacks him. Belmont has to jump in front and save the poor guy. He slaps her, and she goes to the other side of the room. Belmont tells him to stop hurting the kitty like that. But the creature is already attacking him from behind. However, Belmont decides to free her from the curse. Using magic in his eye, he sees something inside the mouth. He activates a power in his hand and punches, and the creature dissolves, and when Ricket looks, it turned into a kitten. Belmont says he had several of these at his house. They're just cute kittens that can change appearance. Ricket, seeing that, says Belmont won't get Alicia for him. And Belmont says she's not a trophy for him to win, warning Ricket that he doesn't understand anything about women. And he's going to demonstrate now that he has a solution for any craziness. Ricket keeps asking, "What do you mean? What is this book?" Belmont is confident, saying he's learned something now too. He looks at the kitten and asks for a favor, activating a power and turning her into an inflated girl out of nowhere. In the room, Lacey realizes she handed him the wrong book. She was supposed to give him the version up to age 10, but she gave him the famous over 18 one. Belmont says it's time to teach something. In the corridors, Alice called Newt to go together to see Belmont. This is because she wants to thank him for saving her. However, Newt warns her that she's trying to steal the boy. Alice says it doesn't matter, and they open the door to his classroom. When they see it, they're shocked. He put the kitten on the table there and is giving it some spankings in various areas. To teach the best techniques from the book, the guys are all impressed, saying it's fascinating. And Newt says he's very bold indeed. Even Ricket is calling him Brother Bell now. Really, from now on, he's my buddy forever. When Belmont realizes Alice is there, he tells her to sit down as there's a lot to learn for her too. But obviously, she says he's a perverted demon. The next day, Ricket is warning everyone in the class that from now on, Belmont is everyone's friend. They agree and line up when he's coming, but he just passes by and ignores everyone who are confused. People want to know why, what was that about, and Ricket sees it as a friendship challenge. He needs to prove that he sees his value, so first, he greets him aristocratically, then militarily, and then gang style. Ricket gives up and doesn't know what else to do. But actually, Belmont is just thinking about when he'll have a girl to do a duel cultivation with. He wants to know why every time he looks at Alice now, she stares and gets angry. Newt appears saying she missed him, and Belmont recognizes her from the entry day. She says she was waiting for him to come talk to her. She whispers in his ear that she knows a little more about duel cultivation. Belmont gets a scare while Ricket falls to the ground in shock, thinking the girls know about the boy's vast knowledge. Belmont agrees right away and says let's go where. Alice hits the table angrily, and Newt asks what's wrong. The poor thing says she has to stop doing these things in broad daylight, but Newt says if she wants, she's invited for duel cultivation too. Embarrassed, Alice makes an angry face and leaves, saying what they do is none of her business. Sometime later, they're walking on the bridge and Ricket is following the two, saying he needs to learn the boy's techniques very well. Belmont asks what she wants to talk about, And she says she called him here because she wants to do a dual cultivation. Bellman asks how she found out about this secret technique. He thought she was talking about that cultivation, but she was really talking about the power. She says dual cultivation was established by the first generation of heroes, but since then, it's no longer a secret. Bellman wonders if this cursed magic was created just to deal with him. Nu is curious, saying all demons lost their magic, but she saw he had power in the exam. And he's so interested in cultivation technique that she imagines he has some connection. Bellman starts to realize that as foolish as she may seem, she clearly has some other intention and is being very attentive. If she finds out his body reacts differently to dual cultivation, she might end up exposing him. Nu reveals that the dual cultivation technique has a secret requirement. The person using it needs to remain pure. So how is that possible if he's an incubus? She points to him, saying she knows that in fact his technique is absorbing power from the opposite gender. That's why both of them were so tired. Bellman didn't know about this technique, but it's good that she's already following this path, since this way she doesn't suspect him. Then he asks her if she knew this is why she called him here to talk about dual cultivation. She says he's an idiot for asking these questions after she made everything so clear. Of course, she's here to kill him and suddenly attacks. Bellman seems calm, but Rickett steps in front and protects the boy. Newt says Rickett ruined the party and warns Bellman that he doesn't have much time left in this world, and with that, she leaves. We see a room where they're discussing the fact that Bellman is gaining fame in the school. People say it's Alice's fault, so indirectly it's the president's fault too. The student council president is Alice's brother, and Bellman is in a difficult situation right now. He needs to cultivate with the girls, but the school is all segregated, so he's not having many chances. However, in this practical combat class, he'll finally have an opportunity. The guys are all surrounding Bellman, protecting him, and he tells everyone to leave. Rickett warns him to be careful. The cat girl is nearby, and she'll finish him off. But Bellman tells him not to worry. It's just the two of them. But the fool Rickett interprets this as if he were saying he trusts him 100% and gets emotional, saying he'll always protect him. Suddenly, someone puts their hand on his shoulder. It's a guy named Brian, who says this demon kid is getting too cocky. It's time he found out how tough this demon is and goes to punch him without hesitation. Goodness gracious. But Bellman easily defends himself and puts his fist aside. In the background, Newt tells him to be careful, and Brian leaves, saying things are getting interesting. The professor then announces how the practical training will be. They'll go in pairs, it will last 4 hours, and whoever destroys the most puppets wins. Rickett is happy that in pairs he'll be able to go with Bellman, but our hero has already gone. Brian looks at Newt and tells her not to interfere. He's the one who's going to kill that kid. Newt thinks Brian is annoying. Suddenly, the two hear something behind them, and when they turn around, it's Bellman being very cheeky, grabbing Newt and jumping through the portal with her. They're teleported, and she tells him to be more careful. He says he wanted to talk to her privately, but he's there on a good spherical adventure. And he also says that she has a denser aura than Alice, must be something from the beast blood, right? Newt says if she tells Alice, she'll be angry. She's surprised he's so brave. Preparing to attack, she tells him to surrender. But her attack hits the golem that was right behind the two. Bellman tells her that these golems are made with a magic called Notch. She wants to know why he's talking about this, and Bellman warns her that unless you attack the core, it's useless to hit the head. Suddenly, the golem grabs her and she can't free herself. She tells him to do something, but Bellman warns that he's powerless, and even if they combined forces, they wouldn't win. But he says his eyes are enough to see through this. He manages to see the core and rips it from the creature. Another one comes at them, and he sees it at the waist and destroys it with a kick. He saves her, and she's impressed, wondering if he really is just an incubus. And then she asks why he's saving her if she's trying to kill him. Bellman says he realized there's something more behind this. If she really wanted to kill him, she wouldn't have called him to such a public place as the bridge that time. But when Bellman looks at her, he still has the absolute vision activated. And let's say he saw her as she came into the world. Obviously, bleeding starts, and she asks where the golems are that are causing him harm. They weren't golems, but they were certainly mountains. And elsewhere, Brian is killing everything, saying he's going to finish off that kid. Newt is trying to revive the boy who suffered from the bleeding. The absolute vision is an ability that only the Demon King has. He can see blood vessels and mana connections. That's why everyone seemed to be somewhat equal to him regardless of gender. But as he's weakened, the absolute vision turned into an X-ray, and the boy can't deactivate it, so when he wakes up, he suffers again. Bellman is seeing a body for the first time, and after explaining everything, Newt laughs in his face. How can someone be an incubus and not handle something like this? However, she approaches and says she now understands why Rostana was interested in him. She also wants to know why so many people want to kill him. Bellman asks if it's because he's a demon. Newt says it's partly because of that, but it's also Alice's fault. That's because people from other races hate her ancestors. The heroine could have wiped out the demon race, but decided to make a pact with them, and they remained alive. And now that Alice has entered the academy and worse still, bringing a demon, everyone wants to finish him off. Belmont doesn't seem too worried and says it's a stupid plan. Remembering that the heroine wanted to end the fight between all races, he realizes that things went wrong for her too. Newt says they have to finish the class soon. Suddenly, Brian appears behind her, and now the two are trapped in a magic circle. However, Newt seems to be resisting and going against him, and Belmont notices she has something in her hand. Just as Brian attacks, she takes a sip and transforms into a tiger version of herself. He opens a barrier of strength and manages to protect himself from the attack. Newt wonders if she succeeded when a punch comes from the smoke right into her belly. He grabs her head and starts slapping her, saying she's very weak. Belmont sees dragon saliva on the ground while Brian shows some images of Alice, saying he'll deal with her later. Newt says he's trash and that she won't let him do that. Brian says he'll finish her off with a 3-layered blow, but just as his arm is descending, something cuts it right in the middle. Ryan has no idea what happened, and Belmont says he regained 1% of the power he had, and now he'll deal with things his way. Death will fall upon those in his path. Newt is frightened when she sees him transformed, while Brian is going crazy, saying it's impossible to kill him. Belmont says he'll spare him if he apologizes to Newt, but Brian says that doesn't make sense. He'll never apologize to a demon trash. He starts conjuring several circles and summons an undead colossus. Newt is sure he can't win against that, and Brian attacks Belmont again, who easily stops it with one hand. Brian is in disbelief. It's the second time this kid has blocked his punch, but Belmont says it's very simple. You just have to see the path of the magic and neutralize it. With that, Belmont starts stealing part of the power used in the Colossus to summon his own, called Cain, who turns the Colossus into seconds. Brian falls to the ground without understanding how this is possible. Belmont's power created Brian's father, who was a guy who beat him and left him traumatized. He's crying, trying to escape, and an explosion occurs in the forest. Meanwhile, the president is coming to watch the test. Brian is finished, so he even went himself. Newt tells Belmont to stop. He has to control that power, saying he can't try to solve everything in the school just using magic. However, Brian comes to send another attack, but Belmont gives him a cut, and now the poor guy is armless and fried. It's better to give up, boy, enough of this. Newt still laughs at him, saying he's tiny indeed. But suddenly, Belmont throws her to the ground, and she says it's too early to do that, but she likes it. He says that after using dragon saliva, you need to spend the power, and the only way he knows now is this. She asks how she can help, and he squeezes her face. However, Belmont doesn't understand why the double cultivation method isn't activating. He starts shouting when Newt thinks. Wait, if he's an incubus, he needs to release his energy through that. And she starts showing him 2 magic spheres of very high density. Belmont obviously starts bleeding. He says the method didn't activate. He'll need to find Alice. But suddenly the president appears, calling him a demonic trash. Brian gets up and explains what happened. But the president says he knows he used his sister to threaten Newt, and if that's the case, he deserves punishment. He then uses magic, and Brian is suspended in the air. The president then says it's time to deal with a demon. The problem is, Belmont realized you couldn't even see the magic the guy used, and the worst part is he's being consumed by his power. The president realizes he's losing control and tells Newt that if she escapes, he'll forgive her since she's been acting as a spy for him. Newt says if it were her before, she'd probably do it, but she won't let him kill this guy. Belmont can perceive the feelings she's feeling. She's been acting as a spy for Alice for a long time. But as much as she hates all humans and wants to end them, she knows it's not Alice's fault. So she grabs Belmont by the collar and throws him flying, telling him to find Alice, recover his power, and tell her she sent apologies. She's crying, thinking it's okay as long as she can make Alice happy. She turns to the president and says it's his turn now. But Belmont is there again, saying it's really his turn. Newt curses him, saying he just cried and made the speech, so what's he doing there? Belmont says she's wasting his time since he even had to spend magic flying back to combat. Newt says he'd better run away, but Belmont says he'll finish this president with just 3 moves. The president asks if he heard right, 3 moves. Newt says it's impossible. No one can even understand the president's power. Suddenly, Belmont is surrounded by blue powers, but in the middle, Belmont breaks his magic, and the guy's secretary says no one has ever done that. Belmont explains that while everyone else uses magic circles to use power, the president uses a concept of time. It's quite complicated to explain, but the president is impressed that he realized it, but says it doesn't matter. And Newt realizes Belmont lost an arm. The president warns that his body is about to be consumed by his own power, and he'll only accelerate the process. He can try to defend himself if he wants, and then launches an attack. Bellman starts creating several barriers and Newt tells him to give up on her. But Bellman says if he does that, she'll die instantly. Does she want to die? Newt says she deserves to die because she betrayed many people, but our hero begins to remember the scenes when the cultivation power activated. Once it was when Lacey wanted him to revive the demon race, and he promised he would do it for her. The other time, Alice wanted to be protected from the creature, and he appeared to do just that. He says now he knows the condition and asks Newt what she wants. Newt shouts and says she wants to stay alive and apologize to Alice and become a real friend. Bellman says he'll fulfill that wish and exchanges a warm saliva. This one doesn't forgive anything. The whole place explodes and the president realizes his attack disappeared. In the middle of the smoke, Bellman appears carrying Newt, saying it took 2 moves and now only 1 is left. The president recognizes that he used double cultivation to cleanse the curse, and the secretary asks if he's talking about that double cultivation. And the president says yes, it's the magic created by the ancestral mother who defeated the demon king. It needs 2 people to use and generates some pretty fun sensations. But the president says he won't lose to a technique from 50 years ago. Bellman says he doesn't need to worry and it'll only take 1 move and he'll be done. The president says he's too confident, but Bellman reaches out and says, "Take this." The end of training portal appears and he jumps through it with Newt, leaving the secretary and the president confused. And the secretary says, "I think it's been 4 hours of training," and he was counting on that. On the other side, Bellman exits the portal with Newt in his arms and the friends come running. But as soon as he sees Newt, he becomes a little shy. Bellman says some things happened and Newt remembers the saliva exchange and gets off him, saying she didn't expect them to do something like that. Rickett instantly thinks he did something absolutely legendary. He managed to do that with an enemy, and everyone kneels down, saying he truly is the Great Lord. Alice comes running to talk to them, and the friends hide, referring to themselves as the legendary love triangle. Alice thanks Newt for being with Bellman since she heard some explosions and got worried about them. Newt hugs her, saying everything will be fine now. But suddenly the president appears, saying that won't be the case. It won't be resolved that easily, and then he goes in front of Alice, who becomes a little embarrassed, asking why he's there. He glances at her and then looks away a bit shyly. This president seems to have the famous sister syndrome. The secretary even tells him to have a little respect. And the president reveals that the boy next to her is the legendary 1,000-year-old demon king Bellman. Rickett says it's impossible and Alice says it doesn't make sense for that boy with droopy fish eyes to be him. She then asks the president, isn't the demon king trapped in the stone? He says the stone was destroyed and the demon king seems to have broken the seal some time ago. But she wants to hear some words. Can she talk to the person who was present at the time? The inspector from that time appears. The president points to Bellman and asks her if that's the guy who was there the day the statue broke. And the inspector obviously says no. The president is startled and asks if she's sure. The inspector says the demon king was a 2-meter tall, muscular, and shiny guy, not this skinny weakling. The president is a bit puzzled and says it's impossible, asking Bellman where he learned double cultivation. Bellman says he learned from Alice and the president freezes. Alice tells him to lie and that she never taught him that. He says actually the first time he did it was with her. The president is being taken away on a cart after this unexpected defeat. Bellman imagines the inspector as Lacey with some disguised power, but Lacey appears behind him. And then he gets confused and she even asks him if the inspector is some demon he hired. But she isn't either. He looks back wondering who she is and the inspector winks. A week after that training, Bellman says he finally understands how this double cultivation works. He needs to satisfy the partner's deepest desire, and he realized that every time he manages to use this double cultivation, he recovers part of his demonic power. He's not sure why the inspector didn't reveal his true identity, but he has to take advantage of this moment while he's hidden to cultivate as much as possible. But his room obviously isn't suitable for that with all those guys surrounding him. During the break, Rickett asks him why he's so sad if he even ascended to the heavens. But Bellman says it's not enough and far from what he wants. Rickett understands he even wants older girls. So he shows him about the clubs and societies. Bellman, needing to cultivate a lot, decides to take a look. There are the gardening girls who ask you to water their plants every day. There are the animal girls asking you to join a wild activity with them. Rickett explains that to rise quickly in this school, he'll need 3 heroic badges. Basically, he needs recognition from those older than him in school. Bellman is overjoyed and gives his best smile, thinking it's perfect. The clubs and societies have no gender segregation. But as he takes a step forward, the crowd of girls takes a step back. A step forward, a step back again. He understands it's because of the fame they created for him. Not only does he have the biggest men's club in school, he's also involved with Alice and Newt. The only group that wants him is the buff guys, and Belmont runs away, thinking that getting involved with these guys will only push him further away from the opposite gender. But there's someone in front of him and he accidentally bumps into her. Of course, he falls into the most peculiar position possible. Belmont thinks that indeed the opposite gender is special and soft. The girl introduces herself as Felix and says she'll show him the fencing group. Belmont asks if she has any resentment against him and she says no. But from the side, they hear laughter, saying it's disgusting to see a demon and someone of mixed race together. She reveals her power, which is a fusion of the human race with the angel race, and says she's a despicable existence. He'd better look for another group. But Belmont says he wants to join her, and she is surprised and embarrassed. But obviously, he wants to join the first place that has at least one woman. She's happy, saying that finally someone entered and tells them to go take the test. Walking around, Alice and Newt are looking for him and find him face to face with Felix. She warns that the rules are simple. He has 3 rounds to prove to her that he has skills. Belmont says no problem and a crowd forms around them. Felix then says she'll start an attacks. He activates the eye that sees everything there and there's an explosion. Even Belmont is scared. It was just supposed to be a test and she came with so much force that the absolute vision activated on its own. Alice then warns him to give up on this club. There's no one because everyone who tries to enter, she beats in the test. And when she loses her temper, she hits even her friends. Besides, she's the one who learned fencing from the legendary warrior Alia. Belmont remembers the day he was challenged by Alia and recognizes that the fencing of both is really similar. Alice tells him to stop fooling around and being a pervert and to give up. Felix apologizes and says it's better if they stop there. But Belmont says that now he wants a second round. He noticed that the moment he dodged her blow, she smiled. So he tells her, if I win here, you'll have to promise me something. Felix is a bit embarrassed while Newt and Alice already know what to expect. Belmont points and says, you'll give me what's most precious to you. Obviously, Belmont is thinking that he wants to fulfill her greatest desire for her. Felix is shy, thinking, most precious. What does he want? While the two now are sure he's the most shameless of all. In the end, Felix decides to agree. If he wins, she'll give it to him. And without hesitation, he activates the absolute vision and realizes that her mana and that of the sword flow is one. This means she trained a lot, but as long as he perceives where her energy is going, he can predict the attacks. She prepares and attacks, and Belmont is confident he'll defend. But what hits his sword was an attack with demonic Kai. Clearly, it was a trap, and now she's on his back. He manages to defend himself just a little, and the two are pushed back. She says it's incredible that he managed to react to that. And he thanks, saying that now he knows exactly what her deepest desire is. Seeing her memories, you can see that she suffered her whole life for being of a mixed race. Her father disappeared after impregnating her mother, but it was Alia who saved her and taught her everything about fencing. And she told her that there's no difference between races when attacking with a sword. Felix says it's incredible to see that he has a demon in his sword, being a first-year student. If that's the case, she can use full force on the third attack. Her friends tell him to give up, and Felix activates the light wings. She warns that amidst the illusions, he'll have to find the true sword. If not, he'll die from all the others, and Belmont says he's ready for whenever she wants to come. And she attacks, thinking maybe he was the one her master was referring to. While Belmont is thinking it's the perfect chance to swap the warm saliva, obviously. Felix remembers the day Alia passed that light wing technique to her and warned that if she found someone who could escape that blow, that was a person who could teach her more than she taught. She's going towards him amidst the flood of sword illusions, but Belmont is standing still in the middle. She goes for the attack, saying she wants to know what he's capable of. But the moment she strikes, his sword is thrown away, leaving her confused and wanting to know what he did. Belmont says he was sure that her habit of wanting to cross swords was the weakness he would exploit. An explosion occurs throughout the castle, and the friends are worried, saying it was a very destructive attack, he must be finished. But the scoundrel is there, saying he's just fine. Felix asks how he knew she was going to aim for the sword, and Belmont says it's because she's too focused on that detail. Swords aren't the only way to seek equality. With this phrase, Felix remembers her master and starts crying, welcoming him to the fencing group. Belmont feels that was the feeling he was waiting for to activate the double cultivation. He then approaches, saying it's time for her to fulfill her part of the bet. Felix says it's okay, she'll do what he wants. Belmont is going to visit a cave with the strongest muscle group in the human body. When Alice tells her older brother Felix to get up, Belmont is startled by the phrase older brother, and he remembers Lacey saying it's sometimes difficult to know an angel's gender. Belmont activates his X-ray power and finds out it's actually a swordsman friend, and now he's dismayed. The only thing he can do is leave a like on this video.